In 1975, Bill Gates wrote a mission statement for Microsoft. And the mission statement had nothing to do with Microsoft. The mission statement was as follows: a personal computer on every single desk in every single office around the world. It had nothing to do with Microsoft software. Bill Gates' ambitions, I don't think he's the best entrepreneur out there, but his ambitions were so much bigger, so much more lavish than just his actual product, his own brand. And I encourage you all to have ambitions that are huge. At Shopify, our ambitions are not to sell software necessarily. They're actually to democratize entrepreneurship around the world. I think that's really important. So I encourage you, when you're thinking about your own plans, think really big. Have those big ambitions. The next thing I want to talk about is the idea of good to great. And you guys know Jim Collins wrote a book about this. It has nothing to do with Jim Collins' book. I think the problem with good ideas is that they often confuse and they often detract from great ideas. And all too often we see a lot of entrepreneurs that are focused on an idea that just isn't great. And so the best example I can give you is the idea of the CAPTCHA. Do you guys know what a CAPTCHA is? Some of you? Okay. So those that don't know what a CAPTCHA is, a CAPTCHA is that device when you go to a website that substantiates you're a human being. It kind of has weird writing and you have to kind of write in exactly what the letters are. The idea of the CAPTCHA was really important simply because websites and companies had to substantiate who was a human and who was a robot, who was a bot trolling the web for a big company, and who was an actual human being. But Google took the idea of a CAPTCHA and created something called a reCAPTCHA. They took an idea that was good and made it great. And do you guys know what a reCAPTCHA is? So a reCAPTCHA does the same thing as a CAPTCHA does, but simultaneously it helps Google build the largest library of digital books in the world. It's helping Google translate a lot of these books that aren't recognizable by a digital scanner. And so the idea that they took something that was good and made it great is fucking awesome. And I encourage you guys to do the exact same thing. Again, the problem with good ideas is that they often become a distraction away from great ideas. And I want you to think about great ideas. We'll talk a little bit about the definition of ideas later on in my chat. One thing I also believe in is competitive advantage. When I was 13 years old, I read a book called The Warren Buffett Way. And it was obviously a book about Warren Buffett and kind of his strategies with Charlie Munger and how they built Berkshire Hathaway. And in that book, they talk about something called the competitive advantage and a moat. A way that someone, if you think of the moat, the castle and kind of the drawbridge, it's a way that not everyone can copy your idea. And throughout my life, any business that I got involved with, be it t-shirts or Shopify or all the failures in between, I've always made sure that I had something that was tangible, that had a competitive advantage, that made sure that people couldn't just rip off my idea. They couldn't just start the next day and do exactly what I could. Now the thing about competitive advantages is it's fairly complicated. People think that things like marketing or branding is a competitive advantage. It could be, but there are a lot of other factors involved. And when I meet entrepreneurs today, often they ask me to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and my feedback to them is, I'll sign it if that's important to you, but if I can hear your idea, and I can replicate it just by hearing your idea, you probably don't have a great idea. And so I encourage you all, when you're looking at businesses, or you're an entrepreneur working at a company, find out what those competitive advantages are, figure out what your moat is. And a couple examples that I just wrote down to talk to you about, things like IP, cost centers, making sure you can get something cheaper than everybody else, market reach, distribution. Those are real competitive advantages. Find one. If you don't have one, please question what you're doing. Challenge it. You guys follow me so far? Okay, good. So the next thing I want to talk about is simplicity. And just show of hands, how many of you are familiar with 37 Signals? Okay, so a good chunk of you. So 37 Signals is a company that I admire a great deal simply because they have this great line. It's don't build a half-assed product, build half a product. And I think that's so unique. And what 37 Signals has done is they've taken huge software projects that Microsoft has created, things like Microsoft Word, Microsoft Project, Microsoft Database, and they've dumped it down to the lowest common denominator. It doesn't do 20 things, it does 2 things, but those are the things that everyone actually uses. And I think that having simple things, finding an idea or a business or a company where simplicity is key and at the forefront, I think that's ideal. And I think far too often entrepreneurs try to complicate things. If you give me your pitch in 15 seconds or 15 minutes and I can't figure it out, it's not a simple idea. It should be as simple as anything. Someone asked me earlier what Shopify does. I said, we allow people to sell stuff online. It's simple, it's easy, people can digest it. Try to think in terms of simplicity. I think it's very, very important. I want to talk a little bit on simplicity, an anecdote that I encountered when I was building my first company, which was a t-shirt business. When I was 17, I was a student at McGill, and I had to make some money because my parents, unfortunately, fell under some hard financial times. And I needed to support myself, and I didn't know anything about business, I didn't know anything about the industry, but someone I knew was on the McGill Student Council, and mentioned to me that McGill spends a lot of money selling on t-shirts every year for orientation and bookstore apparel. And so knowing nothing, and kind of being a bit of a naive young entrepreneur, I decided to get a t-shirt printing machine and start printing t-shirts. And after I got the machine, I took out the loan, and I went to McGill, and I asked them if they would start buying from me. And the irony was, they said no, we work with Reebok or American Apparel or Gildan. And so I spent the next 2 or 3 weeks trying to figure out exactly what the pitch was that Gildan, American Apparel, and Reebok gave to McGill. And what I found out was, it was basically an old dude in a tie that walked in with a huge book with 1,000 different t-shirts, and the McGill Student Council had to go through it. And it was a terrible, terrible process and experience for the Student Council. What I did was, I went into the Student Council office with 3 t-shirts, inexpensive, medium quality, and high end. And I asked them to pick one. That was it. Which one do you like? Don't buy anything from me, just pick one. Once they picked that one particular t-shirt, I then went and printed them, my own cost, and brought them back and said, I now have actual samples. Do you like it? And just by dumbing down the entire process, the pitch, the sales process of selling t-shirts to universities, I was able to get 75 schools to commit to all their orientation to come with me. I wasn't as big as Reebok, I certainly was as big as American Apparel, but I simplified the entire process. I made it a lot more fun. And I think simplicity is something that is so key to good entrepreneurship. Still with me? Okay. So I talked a little bit about good ideas versus great ideas. But what I really want to talk about is not ideas, but actually execution. Because I think even if you have the best idea in the world, with poor execution, you have nothing. I mean that. So Derek Siders, who ran a company and sold it called CD Baby, he created this graph. It's sort of the idea and execution graph. And it's something that it means a great deal to me, and I look at it often, and I reference it when I'm talking to a lot of entrepreneurs. The reason this graph is so interesting to me is because even with an awful idea or a good idea, definitely with a good idea, with no execution, you really have nothing. A good idea with superior execution, you actually have something. So you can imagine, if you have a great idea with amazing execution, the amount of ROI, which you're going to be able to do, is going to be huge. It's going to be so substantial. And I think that the truth is, most entrepreneurs focus way too much on the idea and way less on the execution. And that's something that I think is hugely problematic. And so I really want to encourage all of you to think about that idea of execution. So these are kind of the tenets that I have, and again, you know, these are my personal tenets, and I want to share them with you because I think they've helped me become an entrepreneur, build some really cool companies, had some really terrible failures too, but for the most part, I'm still smiling and still having a great time. But these are the tenets that have made me an entrepreneur, and I believe this is the DNA of an entrepreneur, or of my own entrepreneurial spirit. And so I hope you guys understand what I'm saying here, and hopefully can take some of this back and implement them in your own strategy for being an entrepreneur and building companies, or working for another company. There are obviously other definitions of entrepreneurship beyond just building your own company. You could be an entrepreneur working for a larger corporation. But there is one thing that I haven't talked about yet, and I think it's the most important factor, the most important point about being an entrepreneur. It's so important that I actually have it on my arm. I think Doug has it on his arm also. It's true. It's hustle. I think the most important thing for an entrepreneur is to hustle. Get out there, do it, pivot, iterate, talk to people. Just do something. I think that is the key to success of being an entrepreneur. Thank you.
Harley, would you mind staying up? We have a special presentation for the CA Student Entrepreneur Award. And given that you are an instructor, fantastic. All right. We're also going to invite up Kingsley Manu, who's organized the event, and our illustrious President Arunte. Could you join us as well, please? This is one of the highlights of the evening. It's recognizing a student entrepreneur and all their great work to bring about the dream, right? Just as you spoke about, that was fabulous. Can anyone imagine anything more simple than those points? Do you have any more tattoos, by the way? Just hustle, fantastic. All right, I'm not sure if there's a drum roll possible. Yeah, how about an applause, firstly? And Kingsley, you still have to show yourself. Please join us. And Kingsley, I'm going to have you announce the award winner. Oh, you have the award winner, so then let's. Yeah, you should.
He's got the award.
He's got the award. All right. The CEA Student Entrepreneur Award goes to Campus Grids.
Is this going to mean a lot? You're going to put this on your mantle. Look at the caliber here. Come on, everyone, get in here. Get close. This is a fantastic opportunity. Thank you very much, Charlie. I appreciate it. Dr. Hunter, would you have opportunity to give us an address?
Okay, I didn't bring any props, and I'm really not a business person, but I am. I started business when I was about 4 years old.